June 6, 1944. D-Day. Over 150,000 Allied soldiers stormed the beaches of Normandy in the largest amphibious invasion in human history. The fate of the free world hangs in the balance. But 200 miles away, in a quiet house in London, a Spaniard sits at a typewriter, composing what may be the most important lie ever told. His words will convince Adolf Hitler himself that the real invasion is yet to come, that Normandy is merely a diversion. His name is Juan Pujol García. The Germans call him Arabelle. The British call him Garbo, named after Greta Garbo, because he was the greatest actor in the world. This is his story. The story of a man with no military training, no formal education in espionage, who decided to fight the Nazis alone. Part 1. Ordinary Beginnings. Barcelona, Spain. February 14, 1912. Juan Pujol García is born into a middle-class Catalan family. His father is a textile factory owner. His mother is a housewife. There are 4 children in the family, and Juan is the youngest. By all accounts, Juan is an unremarkable child. He's not particularly studious, he's not athletic. He's shy, bookish, and prone to daydreaming. His teachers describe him as average. His classmates barely remember him. But Juan possesses something that isn't visible in school reports or family photographs. He has an extraordinary imagination and an unshakable moral compass. These 2 qualities, creativity and conviction, will one day make him the most successful double agent in history. As a young man, Juan drifts through various professions. He works in his father's factory. He tries his hand at chicken farming and fails spectacularly. He manages a cinema. He works in a hotel. Nothing sticks. And then, in 1936, everything changes. The Spanish Civil War erupts. For 3 years, Spain tears itself apart. Francisco Franco's nationalists, backed by Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy, fight against the Republicans, supported by the Soviet Union. Juan wants no part of this war. He isn't interested in ideology or politics. He just wants to survive. But in civil war, neutrality is impossible. He's conscripted into the Republican Army. Then, fearing for his life, he deserts and hides in the nationalist zone using forged papers. He witnesses atrocities on both sides. He sees neighbors denounce neighbors, families torn apart, summary executions, the machinery of totalitarianism grinding human lives into dust. It's during these dark years that Juan develops a deep, visceral hatred of fascism and totalitarianism in all its forms. But he also learns something crucial. In times of chaos, with the right story and the right papers, you can be whoever you say you are. When the war ends in 1939 with Franco's victory, Juan is traumatized but alive. He settles in Madrid and takes a job managing a hotel. He meets a woman named Araceli González, and they fall in love. They marry in 1940. But Juan cannot forget what he's seen. And when Nazi Germany invades Poland, then France, then turns its war machine across Europe, Juan makes a decision that will change his life forever. He decides to fight back. Alone. Part 2. The One-Man Resistance. London, January 1941. Juan Pujol García walks into the British Embassy in Madrid with an audacious proposal. He wants to become a British spy. The embassy official barely looks up from his desk. The answer is no. Juan has no intelligence experience, no military training, no connections, no credentials whatsoever. The British aren't interested. Undeterred, Juan tries again, and again. 3 times he approaches the British. 3 times he's rejected. So Juan decides to do something extraordinary. If the British won't help him spy on the Germans, he'll spy on the Germans himself, and then offer his services to Britain with proof of his abilities. There's just one problem. Juan has absolutely no way of accessing German intelligence. So he comes up with an outrageous plan. He'll convince the Germans that he's spying for them, while actually working against them. He'll create an entirely fictitious spy network, and he'll do it all from neutral territory, without ever setting foot in England. In late 1940, Juan approaches the German embassy in Madrid. He presents himself as a passionate Spanish nationalist who despises the British and wants to help the German cause. He claims he's about to travel to London and could gather intelligence there. The Germans are skeptical but intrigued. Spain is officially neutral, but Franco's regime is sympathetic to the Axis. Juan speaks English. He's traveled before. He could be useful. They give him a crash course in espionage, invisible ink, codes, accommodation addresses in Lisbon where he can send letters. They give him money for expenses. They give him a code name, Arabelle. And then Juan Pujol García does something that seems insane. Instead of going to London, he moves to Lisbon, Portugal, and pretends he's in England. From a cramped apartment in Lisbon, armed with nothing but a tourist guidebook to England, a map of Britain, a Portuguese-English dictionary, and back issues of British magazines he finds in the public library, Juan begins fabricating intelligence reports for the Germans. He writes about British convoys leaving Liverpool, schedules he makes up entirely. He describes the mood on the streets of London during the Blitz, though he's never been there. He invents sub-agents, a Venezuelan student in Glasgow, a Swiss businessman in Bristol, a Portuguese airline employee. And incredibly, the Germans believe him. They don't just believe him, they're impressed. His reports seem detailed and credible. They pay him more money. They ask for more intelligence. But Juan is walking a tightrope. He's reading about England, but he doesn't truly know it. He makes mistakes. He describes Glaswegians as heavy drinkers willing to do anything for a bottle of wine, not realizing that Scotland is whiskey country and wine would be suspicious. He claims there's a convoy leaving Liverpool for Malta, when any British person would know that convoys to Malta left from Gibraltar. Some German intelligence officers begin to have doubts, but others vouch for Arabelle. His information seems valuable. The debate continues. Meanwhile, Juan is becoming desperate. He's running out of money. His wife Araceli is pregnant with their first child. The strain of maintaining this elaborate fiction 24 hours a day is enormous, and he still hasn't convinced the British to work with him. In February 1942, Juan makes another approach to the British, this time through an American contact. He provides evidence of his correspondence with the Germans. He shows them the codes, the secret ink formula, the payment receipts. Finally, the British pay attention. MI5, Britain's counterintelligence service, is astounded. This strange little Spaniard has somehow convinced the Germans he's running a spy network in Britain while sitting in Lisbon. It's simultaneously brilliant and completely mad. But more importantly, the Germans trust him, and that makes him potentially invaluable. An MI5 officer named Tomás Harris is assigned to handle Juan. The two men meet in Lisbon, and Harris immediately recognizes Juan's potential. In April 1942, arrangements are made to smuggle Juan and his pregnant wife to Britain. The mission is given the go-ahead. Operation Garbo is born. Part 3. Becoming Garbo. Spring 1942. Juan Pujol García finally arrives in England, for real this time. He's brought to a safe house in London and introduced to his MI5 handlers. The plan is simple but audacious. Juan will continue his correspondence with the Germans, but now his intelligence will be carefully controlled by the British. He will become a double agent. But not just any double agent. He'll be the centerpiece of Britain's entire deception strategy. His handler, Tomás Harris, is an art dealer and MI5 officer of Spanish heritage. The two men form an instant bond. Harris is creative, cultured, and brilliant. Together, they begin to expand Juan's fictional spy network into something extraordinary. Let's understand what Juan and Harris are creating. It's not just one fake spy. It's an entire phantom organization. First, there's Garbo himself, supposedly living in London, the main agent. But he tells the Germans he's recruited sub-agents across Britain. Agent 1 is a Portuguese airline employee in London who can observe troop movements. Agent 2 is a Swiss businessman who travels around Britain for work. Agent 3 is a Venezuelan student living in Glasgow, working in an arms factory. Agent 4 is a Gibraltarian waiter working in an underground canteen used by British officers. He overhears conversations. Agent 5 is a brother of Agent 3, serving in the Canadian Army. Agent 6 is a South African linguist working in propaganda. Agent 7 is an ex-seaman living in Wales who hates Britain. And it doesn't stop there. These agents recruit their own sub-agents. Agent 7 recruits Agent 7-1, 7-2, and 7-3. Eventually, Garbo's network grows to 27 fictional people, agents, sub-agents, and even some of their relatives. Each agent has a complete backstory, personalities, political views, personal problems. Some agents don't like each other. One becomes ill and dies. Garbo even sends a funeral wreath. Another falls in love. Harris and Garbo spend hours crafting these personalities, writing their letters, creating their reports. They work from a house in northwest London, surrounded by maps, reference books, and files on their fictional creations. But this isn't just creative writing exercise. Every piece of intelligence that Garbo sends to Germany must be carefully calibrated. It must seem valuable enough to maintain the Germans' trust, but it cannot genuinely help the German war effort. The technique is called chicken feed. You give the enemy real information, but information that's either already known to them through other sources, true but useless, true but too late to act upon, or laced with subtle inaccuracies that make it misleading. For example, Garbo might report on a convoy that's already sailed and reached its destination. The information is accurate, so it builds trust, but it's useless to German U-boats. Or he might report troop movements that are real, but omit crucial details or exaggerate the numbers in ways that mislead German planning. Every message is a chess move. Every report is calculated to build Garbo's credibility for the moment when the British will need the Germans to believe a truly massive lie. The Germans love Arabelle. His reports flood into German intelligence headquarters in Berlin. They're detailed, seemingly well-sourced, and arrive regularly. The Abwehr, German military intelligence, comes to regard him as their best agent in Britain. They don't know that every single word is written in a London safe house, approved by MI5, crafted to serve British interests. By 1943, Garbo is sending multiple messages per week. Some of his letters are 20 pages long. The workload is enormous. Harris and Garbo often work late into the night, maintaining the fictional lives of 27 imaginary spies. Juan's wife, Araceli, plays her part too, helping with the typing and managing the household, while Juan is consumed by his secret work. They now have a young son and another child on the way. But there's a problem brewing. The Abwehr wants to meet Arabelle in person. They want him to travel to neutral territory, perhaps Lisbon, for a face-to-face meeting with his German handlers. This cannot happen. If Juan meets them, they might ask questions he can't answer. They might test him in ways the British can't predict. Harris and Garbo devise an excuse. Arabelle's work in Britain is too important and too sensitive. Travel would arouse suspicion. He must remain in place. The Germans accept this, for now. Part 4. The Dress Rehearsal. July 1943. The Allies are planning Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily. It's a massive undertaking, involving thousands of ships and over 150,000 men. But the Germans must not know where the blow will fall. Enter Operation Barclay, a deception plan to convince the Germans that Sicily is not the target. The Allies want Hitler to believe they'll attack somewhere else, perhaps Sardinia, perhaps Greece. Garbo plays a crucial role. His Phantom network reports extensive preparations in North Africa, but they suggest the buildup is aimed at the eastern Mediterranean, not Sicily. Other deception operations support this story. Most famously, Operation Mincemeat plants a corpse carrying fake invasion plans off the Spanish coast. But Garbo's intelligence corroborates and reinforces these deceptions. When the Allies land in Sicily on July 9, 1943, the Germans are partially surprised. Some troops that could have defended Sicily were held back, guarding against attacks that never came. The deception worked, and Garbo's contribution was significant. But this is merely a dress rehearsal. The main event is still to come. D-Day. Operation Overlord. The liberation of Western Europe. The entire plan depends on surprise. The Allies will land in Normandy, but they need the Germans to believe the attack will come at Pas de Calais, the narrowest point of the English Channel, the most obvious invasion route. Even after the landings begin in Normandy, the Allies need the Germans to believe that Normandy is just a diversion, that the real invasion, the big one, is still coming at Calais. If the Germans believe this, they'll hold their powerful panzer divisions in reserve around Calais, waiting for an invasion that will never come. The troops landing in Normandy will have precious time to establish their beachhead. This is where Garbo becomes essential. The deception plan is called Operation Fortitude. It's one of the most elaborate military deceptions ever conceived. The British create an entirely fictional army group, FUSAG, the first U.S. Army group, supposedly assembling in southeastern England, across from Calais. They build dummy tanks, fake aircraft, phony radio traffic. They have General Patton, whom the Germans respect and fear, appear at public events in southeastern England, suggesting he'll lead the invasion. And they have Garbo's network report on all of it. Starting in early 1944, Garbo's subagents begin sending reports about the buildup. Agent 7-2 reports on American troops in Dover. Agent 7-4 observes landing craft in the Thames estuary. Agent 4 overhears officers discussing operations near Calais. The reports are detailed, specific, and completely fabricated. But they fit perfectly with what German reconnaissance is seeing. The dummy installations, Patton's appearances, the radio traffic. The Germans believe it all. Hitler himself studies maps showing FUSAG's supposed positions. But the greatest test is still ahead. June 5, 1944, the night before D-Day. In a house in northwest London, Juan Pujol García sits at his typewriter, sweat on his brow. He's about to compose the most important message of the war, perhaps of his life. The plan is daring and dangerous. Garbo will warn the Germans about the Normandy invasion, but the warning will arrive too late for them to act on it. This will prove Garbo tried to warn them, cementing his credibility. Then, in a follow-up message, he'll convince them that Normandy is a diversion, and the real invasion is still coming at Calais. It's a high-wire act. If anything goes wrong, the entire deception collapses. Part 5. D-Day and the Great Deception. June 6, 1944, 3 a.m. The invasion of Normandy is underway. Allied paratroopers are dropping behind enemy lines. Naval bombardment is beginning. In a few hours, thousands of men will storm the beaches. In London, Juan Pujol García transmits an urgent message to his German handlers in Madrid, who relay it to Berlin. The message warns of unusual activity, suggesting an imminent Allied operation. His subagents have observed troop movements heading toward the south coast. But here's the genius. The message is sent at 3 a.m. Juan's German handler in Madrid isn't at his radio at this hour. The message won't be decoded and forwarded to Berlin until much later. Too late to make any difference. When the Germans finally receive and decode the message, the invasion is already underway. But they don't blame Garbo. They see that he tried to warn them. His commitment is proven. His value is confirmed. Now comes the crucial second act. On June 9th, 3 days after D-Day, Garbo sends his most important message ever. It's a long, detailed report, claiming he's held an urgent meeting with all his available sub-agents. They've analyzed the situation together. The message concludes with a stark warning. Normandy is a diversion. The main invasion force is still waiting in southeastern England. The real attack will come at Pas de Calais. The Allies are trying to draw German reserves away from Calais to Normandy. The Germans must not fall for this trap. The message is sent late at night. Garbo insists his handler wake up his superiors in Berlin because the intelligence is so critical. In Berlin, German High Command receives Garbo's warning. They study it carefully, and they believe it. Adolf Hitler himself reads Garbo's report. He orders that the message be highlighted in red and distributed to all senior commanders. He instructs his generals to keep powerful panzer divisions in reserve around Calais. For weeks after D-Day, as Allied forces struggle to break out of their Normandy beachhead, elite German armored divisions sit idle around Calais, waiting for an invasion that will never come. The deception is so successful that even when captured German documents later show that the German High Command continued to believe in the Calais threat well into July, a full month after D-Day. By the time the Germans realize there is no second invasion, it's too late. The Allies have established their beachhead. Reinforcements and supplies are flowing into Normandy. The liberation of Europe has begun. Historians later estimate that Garbo's deception saved tens of thousands of Allied lives. Some argue it may have shortened the war by months. In recognition of his service, Juan Pujol García is awarded the Member of the Order of the British Empire, one of Britain's highest civilian honors. The ceremony is secret, of course. No one can know that Garbo even exists. But here's the extraordinary coda to this story. The Germans don't realize they've been deceived. They still believe Arabelle is their loyal agent. They think he did his best, but the Allies outsmarted them. So in December 1944, Nazi Germany awards Juan Pujol García the Iron Cross Second Class for his valuable service to the Reich. Juan Pujol García remains the only person in history to receive both the Iron Cross from Germany and the Order of the British Empire from Britain. And he deserved neither, or both, depending on how you look at it. Part 6. After the War. May 8, 1945. Victory in Europe. The war is over. Nazi Germany has been defeated. Juan Pujol García has played his part in one of history's greatest victories. But what happens to Garbo now? The problem is simple and serious. The Germans still think Arabelle is their agent. As Nazi officials are captured and interrogated, as intelligence files are seized, there's a risk someone will reveal Arabelle's true identity. If former Nazis or their sympathizers learn that Juan Pujol García deceived them, he could become a target for revenge. MI5 makes a decision. Garbo must disappear. In 1945, Juan and his family are relocated to Venezuela. MI5 helps stage his death. Rumors are quietly spread that Juan Pujol García died of malaria in Angola in 1949. A death certificate is created. The trail goes cold. In Caracas, Venezuela, Juan starts over. He opens a small business teaching English and runs a bookshop. He lives quietly, keeping his past secret. His neighbors know him as a polite Spanish expatriate who doesn't talk much about his life before Venezuela. But the transition is difficult. Juan struggles with depression. The intensity of his wartime work, the constant lies, the pressure, it all takes its toll. His marriage to Araceli becomes strained. By the 1950s, they've separated. Araceli and their children eventually move back to Spain. Juan remains in Venezuela, increasingly isolated. For decades, Juan Pujol García lives in obscurity. The world doesn't know his name. There are no books about him, no films, no recognition. The man who helped save D-Day is forgotten. He remarries to a Venezuelan woman and continues his quiet life. He reads. He follows world events. He watches as veterans are celebrated, memoirs are published, and the history of World War II is written and rewritten. His name appears in none of it. The decades pass. 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. Juan grows older. He wonders sometimes if anyone even remembers what he did, if it mattered, if the sacrifice of his normal life was worth it. And then, in 1984, something remarkable happens. A British writer named Nigel West is researching double agents for a book. He's studying MI5 files that have been partially declassified. He comes across references to an agent codenamed Garbo, described as possibly the most important double agent of the war. But there's almost no information about Garbo's real identity. The trail leads to a death certificate from Angola in 1949. West doesn't believe it. The death seems too convenient. He begins investigating, following thin leads across continents. And eventually, after months of detective work, Nigel West finds Juan Pujol García alive, living quietly in Venezuela, running a small bookshop in Chironi, a coastal town. When West approaches him, Juan is initially wary. He's kept his secret for nearly 40 years. Why reveal it now? But West persuades him. The war is long over. The Nazis are defeated. There's no danger anymore. And the world deserves to know what he did. Juan agrees to tell his story. Part 7. Recognition and Legacy. Nigel West's book, Garbo, is published. For the first time, the world learns the full story of Juan Pujol García. The response is immediate and overwhelming. Historians are astonished. Veterans organizations want to meet him. The media calls him a hero. In 1984, at age 72, Juan travels to England for the first time since the war. He's invited to visit the Cabinet War Rooms, the underground bunker from which Churchill directed Britain's war effort. He's treated as a returning hero. He meets with MI5 officers, now elderly themselves. He reconnects with some of the people who worked with him during the war. They share memories, laugh about the absurdities of their elaborate deception, and honor those who didn't survive to see victory. Juan visits the beaches of Normandy. He stands on the sand where thousands died, where the liberation of Europe began. He knows that his work helped make that liberation possible, that his lies saved lives. It's a moment of profound emotion for a man who spent decades believing he'd been forgotten. Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, himself a naval veteran of World War II, invites Juan to a reception. He thanks him personally for his service to Britain and the Allied cause. Juan is humble. He insists he was just doing what needed to be done, that others were braver, sacrificed more. But those who understand the intelligence war know better. They know that Garbo's contribution was extraordinary. Juan Pujol García returns to Venezuela, but his story is now part of history. Books are written about him. Documentaries are made. Historians study his methods. In 1985, he's invited back to Spain, the country he left during the Civil War nearly half a century earlier. Franco is dead. Spain is now a democracy. Juan can finally come home, though he chooses to keep his residence in Venezuela. He lives his final years with quiet satisfaction. Not pride, exactly. Juan was never boastful. But satisfaction. He did something important, something good. He fought fascism when it mattered most, and he won. October 10, 1988. Juan Pujol García dies in Caracas, Venezuela. He's 76 years old. His obituaries appear in newspapers around the world. The New York Times, The Guardian, El País. They all tell the remarkable story of the little man who fooled Hitler. But the best tribute comes from the veterans who lived because of what he did. The soldiers who landed on Normandy's beaches and survived because German panzers were waiting uselessly at Calais. They never knew his name during the war, but they owed him their lives. Juan Pujol García was not a soldier. He never fired a gun in combat. He never stormed a beach or flew a mission. But his weapon was imagination, and his battlefield was the mind of the enemy. In an age of total war, when millions fought with rifles and tanks and bombers, one man fought with nothing but a typewriter, a guidebook, and an extraordinary gift for storytelling. He created 27 people who never existed. He wrote their stories, gave them personalities, made them real enough to fool the most powerful military intelligence service in the world. And when it mattered most, when the fate of D-Day and perhaps the entire war hung in the balance, his fictional network delivered the lie that saved thousands of lives. Today, in the museums of World War II, you can see the artifacts of his deception: the coded letters, the secret ink formulas, the German communications praising Agent Arabelle. In the beaches of Normandy, plaques honor the invasion's success. And historians now know that success owed a debt to a quiet Spaniard with an extraordinary imagination. Juan Pujol García proved that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is a quiet man at a typewriter, fighting tyranny the only way he can, one elaborate lie at a time. His story reminds us that in humanity's darkest hours, ordinary people can do extraordinary things. That one person, armed with nothing but conviction and creativity, can change history. That is the legacy of Garbo, the spy who never was, the network that never existed, the man who saved D-Day.